Okay, hello everyone. Hi, so I thought I'll pop on today because I've been receiving applications for clarity in the last week or so, and I wanted to make this video, do this live, so that those of you who have sent in your applications will have a sense of what goes on behind the scenes, okay, as to how I process the application once I get it. Okay, so the reason I wanted to make this video is really because I know from my own personal experience being on the other end of this process, right? When I submit an application for, let's say, a program or something that I'm hoping to be part of, that once we send in the application, it's quite a vulnerable feeling kind of time, right? No matter how many times we may have gone through that process, whether it's applying for a school, applying for, studies or any kind of program, especially for those of us who are still healing from wounds, inner wounds, there is always a bit of fear of what happens after I send it in, and what does it mean if I don't get in, right? So this is coming from my own experience. I'm not saying that those of you who have sent in, your applications necessarily feel the same kind of vulnerability, but my guess would be, to some extent, there will be some uncertainty and some vulnerability, right? As we send in an application. So I actually had an experience in the past. This is many years ago, like more than 10 years ago, when I actually did send in an application for a spiritual formation program. And I hadn't known at the time actually that they only took in 10 people, across the world. And it's quite an established program. So a friend of mine who was applying for it, who is a much more seasoned pastoral minister at the time, so this was more than 10 years ago, she was applying for it, and she asked me to apply for it as well. And, I was in between stuff that I was doing, so I thought I would do so. So my friend got in to that program, and I didn't get into the program, which was fine. I mean, I kind of expected as well that I probably didn't have the requisite experience. I was kind of I thought maybe, I had some experience, but maybe I should have had more experience before I applied for that program. But when my application was rejected, there was no reason given. And I wrote in to just kind of ask, can I know what maybe area I need to work on, so that if I want to apply again next year or, in the future, I will have a sense of when I'm readier, right? When I'm more ready to apply. And I was just given this very short response that basically they don't share the, what goes on behind the application process. So that's kind of confidential. So that was that. But I remember feeling, I understand if the process is confidential, but really, was there really nothing that you could offer me as an applicant so that for my own growth, I would have a sense of, what to work on, for example, or why, or whether or not I should even apply for this program in the future. So anyway, that's kind of the preamble as to why I want to share this behind the scenes thing about what happens when I've received your application, all right? Because really this whole exercise, this whole process is itself part of the spiritual journey and part of the formation journey for us. And so I'm also using this opportunity to help you get as much out of the application process as you can, all right? So this is a bit of a behind the scenes look. And also gives you a sense of how I operate, so that you know what to expect, right? You're beginning to build some chemistry here, maybe. Okay. And for any of you who are watching this, who haven't sent in an application, or you're listening to this on the podcast when it eventually makes it to the podcast, this will also help you in your discernment, right, prior to applying, whether or not this sounds like something you want to be part of. So let's talk about the behind the scenes process after you submit an application for clarity, right? Which is this signature small group coaching offer that I have to help people connect more deeply with themselves and get to know themselves with greater clarity and specificity. So this whole process of, who comes in and who joins clarity is a co-discernment process, right? Co-discernment in the sense that there's the discernment process of the applicant and whether you discern whether or not to apply for clarity. And to help that process, I made several earlier videos and lives, right? The whole series, 5-part series on how do you choose the right resources for your interior journey. That was part of my attempt, I guess you could say, to help you make a better discernment about whether or not to apply. So that's your part. And then after you apply, if you've applied, you've sent the application, then there's also my part. So this is a co-discernment, right? I have my job that's different from your discernment to discern whether or not to offer you a place in clarity, right? So that's what I want to talk a little bit more about. So what's the process behind my discernment process? Okay. So there are a couple of considerations that's always kind of like the main thing that guides my discernment. Okay. So the first one is clarity, this very specific offer, right? This 8-month small group journey, coaching journey, interior integration coaching journey. Is clarity the point of greatest leverage for growth in your interior journey at this point in time? Okay, so that's, I would say, the biggest piece of my discernment process when you submit an application. That's what I'm looking out for. Okay, it's very important because if the answer is no, then ethically, I should not be giving you the place, even if you're willing to pay me for it, right? Because why should that happen if clarity is not the point of greatest leverage? So one of the things that I do, or part of my coaching style, right, is being strategic. It's so interesting. It's kind of like discerning with the spirit, but also understanding that we can be strategic about it, right? That this interior journey happens in different phases and stages, there are different components. And when you submit an application, and I'll talk a little bit about how even the design of the questions, right, is meant to help me extract information that will be important for me to make this discernment. If I find that there are other parts of your journey that's probably missing, and actually that part is going to give you much greater benefit if you add in that dimension, then it's my ethical responsibility to tell you so, right? And I will, and I have. So I'm looking out for whether, based on my experience, based on what I understand of the interior journey, what I have learned and observed and gone through myself, what's the best decision for you, right? So if the answer for this question is yes, then we move on to the next step. If the answer is no, then already in my response to you, when I continue the conversation, I'll probably make an indication to you, and maybe the answer here is maybe. It's like, it's okay, it seems like it could be, but I need more information. There are other things to consider. So that's the first consideration. The second consideration, given that this is a group container, right? It's not an individual one-on-one journey. So the experience, like how much the participants in clarity will benefit and enjoy their experience and really kind of like learn, be able to receive and contribute to one another and learn from one another. It's not just up to me and up to them individually, it's also kind of up to the cohort, right? So that this is a very important dynamic kind of like consideration for any kind of group container. So I don't just look at your individual application. I will wait till I receive all the applications. I'm going to look at it as a group as well, and especially for all those whom I think can benefit individually from clarity. Another question I need to ask would be, is there sufficiently shared background and foundation for a fruitful shared journey, right? So I need to zoom out and kind of look at the collective. That's something that you're also expecting me to do, because if you're applying for clarity, knowing that this is a group journey, you are trusting me to make the discernment in curating the cohort that would most likely support you in your journey, right? So this is an important role that I have to play. So that's the other consideration that's in the background when I look at your application. So the objective is really to discern the best possible way forward, both for you as an individual, right? For you, the applicant as an individual, but also the group, because this is a group container, and the composition of the group, the curation of the group will impact your individual journey in the next 8 months, or these 8 months, where we journey together in this interior integration process, right? So that's the objective. I need to look at these two different dimensions. And so this is there's a 4-step kind of process, okay? I'm just gonna share this to you, being very transparent so you know. So the first step happened before you even filled in and submitted the application, all right? So the first step to help me make this discernment is to figure out how to design the whole process and what kind of questions to ask in the application form so that I will get the pertinent data that I would need to make the discernment, right? So that's why I did the 5-part series on how to choose the right interior resources for yourself. That was already priming you, and already some of you self-selected yourself out of the process, that you were thinking of applying for clarity, and when you went through that series of videos, you realized that you weren't quite ready for it, or there are some other things that maybe you need to do first or would better suit you. So at that point, some of you already realized, right? Okay, maybe this is not for you. So that's great. And then those of you who applied, those videos were meant to prime you to answer the questions that I put on the application form, okay? And those questions come from my experience of journeying with many different people and my past experiences of who tend to be the clients who get the most out of clarity, and what I've learned from clients who did benefit from clarity, but along the way we realized that, there was this piece that was kind of missing, and maybe that would have been the highest leverage point for their journey, right? So I have clients in the past who did benefit from clarity and from the process of clarity, but there are a couple of things that, I would tell them, after this, you're going to tend to this other dimension of interior journey. And then with time, you will automatically be able to reap even more benefit from the journey that you've made with me in clarity, right? So it's not that they didn't get anything out of it. They get something out of it. But there are also clients when the fit is really right, when it's happening at the right point, I guess, in where they are in their life right now, or in their journey right now, they really get so much more. So now that this is a group container, I need to be, how should I say, a lot more specific, right, on how to help both of us, like you, the applicant, and me, make the decision or make the discernment so that, nothing is ever 100%, but there's a higher chance, right? There's a very much better chance that you come in at a point where you can get the best or the most out of clarity. Okay, so the design of the application and the questions, that was step 1. Step 2, once you've submitted your application, given that the questions I have put up are very deep questions, then I have a lot of work to read your application, okay? Because the information that you share, your stories, and what you answer in the application, is just really so rich. And here I just want to say I am humbled and moved in reading the applicants' stories, the applications that have been sent in. I'm also really quite wowed at the depth and the work that the applicants have already put in even before applying for this, in their own interior journey. So for me, I'm always very moved and very grateful, and in a sense in awe, being reminded that beyond what I can see and know, there are so many people who are really taking the interior journey very seriously. Okay, so I honor the time that you put into submitting the application, and I honor that by really taking my time to read it more than once, to ponder, to prayerfully discern, take in the information that you have shared, and kind of sense what is missing, what information maybe is missing that I still need, that maybe you haven't shared. So that's when I will respond. I will always respond by an email, and for some of you, you would find that I have extra questions or more further clarifications that I want to get from you. And that's a step 2 that you'll hear from me. Step 3 then would be after, we've had that exchange, I would send you a link for a 30-minute kind of like Zoom call. Some coaches, they call it they have this thing called like a chemistry call. Basically, it's just to kind of make sure that we have a fit. Yeah. Like when we talk live, that both of us mutually, we feel comfortable with the dynamics and there's a fit. And this also provides data for me on my end in curating the group. Right. And during the Zoom call, we'll also clarify any outstanding questions beyond what we've already exchanged in the email. And after applications are closed and whoever has applied, I've done step 1 to 3, then really with prayer and all that, I will make a final decision to offer up to 8 places. So 8 is the max. We may not get to 8. Okay. In the first place, I don't know whether I'll have 8 applications that would already fit the criteria where clarity is the point of greatest leverage for you in your interior journey, right? So, but let's say, I receive more than 8 places or more than 8 applicants for whom clarity really seems like a really good fit, then I guess I have my work cut out for me, right? I really need to pray because I'm very confident I cannot take more than 8 at this time without compromising the quality of what I can deliver, okay? Because it's clarity as a group container. It's not just me giving you input or facilitating exercises in, let's say, our webinar. What actually happens is through your responses in your practices, through the assignments, that I will be giving you to do, whether it's in the community sharing portal or it's just you submitting it and me reading it, I will actually be actively, in a sense, journeying and tracking with you, sensing your journey. And that's a lot of work on the back end that's happening. And I will not be doing justice if I take on more than I can do that, kind of like responsibility for. Because once let's say once you start, like once you're in the container, right? It is really you have, in a sense, like, my promise, I will really do my best to support you. So a lot of it's going to be, there's going to be things that are fixed, but there are also going to be things that are dynamic and organic and adaptable, right? So I need a small enough group size that I can be flexible, okay, to cater to the needs that arises in that journey. So I will offer up to max, right, 8 to those who are most likely to benefit from clarity, and also I think is the best fit for the group composition. Okay, so those are the 4 steps. And I just want to say that if you don't get an offer this time around or whatever it is, right? There's always going to be a bit of a sense of a disappointment, right? You care enough about something that you make the effort to apply. And, if you don't get it, I know from my own experience as well that there will be some disappointment. But I just want to assure you, right, that I will not just leave you hanging, because if you submitted the application and we already entered this conversation, my whole point, even in the process, is I want to get more information to be able to help you discern what could be a better next step for you. Because my presupposition is really, this is not me calling the shots. I'm just trying to cooperate with the Holy Spirit. I trust that God has in mind who he would like to call into this particular container, right? I'm really also just along for the ride. Ultimately, I have nothing good that I can deliver. I can't help you unless, in a sense, God is calling me to help you, right? There must be some kind of fit between your needs at this point in your life and your journey and the specific gifts that God has given to me, because there are many gifts that I do not have, and there are many other parts of the journey and many other resources that are excellent and important, that I really can't give, right? So the premise, I guess you could say, the assumption is, I hope that on both our parts, we are trusting that God is making the match. So if you don't get an offer this time, it means that in my best discernment, that's also the best decision for you. And then I will share with you, based on what you have given me and what I've discerned, what kind of resource I assess will serve you better as your next step at this point, right? And I just want to say also that I have had clarity clients in the past who have wanted to, kind of like do clarity with me, but journeyed maybe like a year or even 2 years first, because that was something that was best suited for them before they actually did clarity. And then when they did, they were in a much better place to actually benefit from clarity. So it's a long game, guys. Okay, the interior journey is a marathon. There's no haste. There's no haste. I have to remind myself that sometimes also. And a caveat about discernment, as always, is that there must be openness and trust and surrender to the Holy Spirit's direction, both on your part and my part, all right? Like I said, we're not the ones calling the shots. We're just trying to listen well and respond accordingly, right? To cooperate with divine grace. Secondly, as with all discernment, there is never like 100% certitude that you're going to get it right, that that our discernment is correct. But then again, that's also not the point of discernment. All right. The point of discernment is not to make a correct decision. The point of discernment is always to grow closer to Christ, to grow closer or deeper in our trust for the Lord, to trust that the process of discernment always, if done in a sense correctly, right, it's not about a correct outcome, but that it helps us get more intimate in our knowledge of how God operates, how he loves us, and so that we can lean more deeply into trust in him. All right. And then also a very helpful reminder always with discernment is, since discernment is always about the current step, it's never about like 3 or 4 steps ahead. It's always the current step. The current step is just that. It is the current step. So regardless what the decision is at this point, what the outcome of this discernment is, we move on to the next step. Okay, so it's really not that big a deal. And I mean, even though it can feel, we feel what we feel, but in the larger picture, when you look at the longer journey, it's just the next step. And we keep taking the next step. And we can trust that the one who leads us in this journey loves us so much. He really, really wants the best for us, even more than we want the best for ourselves. Okay. So both you and we're operating in the dark here. Okay. Even with all my strategies and my attempts to help gain clarity and to help us make a good discernment, when you really pull back and look at the larger picture, we are in the dark about what God is doing. And there is liberation in that. Okay. All right. That is it for the slides that I have. So that is actually also it about this. This is what I wanted to share in today's video. I hope that you find it assuring and maybe helpful as well as you continue to wait for my response. So at the time that I'm making this video for this process, I mean, there are a few days left for the clarity applications to be sent in. So I just want to say, if you're in the process of it, or you're kind of like still on the fence, just take your time. If you can submit it by the deadline, then in a sense, I think it's meant to be, right? If for whatever reason you're just very close to the deadline and you can't, you're not sure you can send it in right under the deadline, you can check in with me. All right. And depending on how many applications I already have, what's on my plate, I will let you know whether or not I will wait for your application, or whether maybe we should just take that as a sign that perhaps this batch or this year is maybe not for you. All right. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I'm praying for you, and I ask you to pray for me too on my end of this process and this journey. Thank you, and bye.